Hi, second graders. I'm here at my house with Xander. This is my puppy Xander, and I like how he came over to say hi. Wasn't that cute? Xander, say hi. Come here. Come here, Xander. Look, say hi. Hi. There he is. Okay, good boy. All right, go sit down. Go over there. Go ahead. Go lay down. Now I'm not gonna get rid of him. Come on, just lay down. Okay. So today we are going to read, or I'm going to read this book. It's called All the Way to America. And the reason I chose this book is because right now, if we were in school, what we would be reading about during our morning read alouds, that Miss Ford would read the read alouds and she'd show pictures in the flip book, right? So that was during our ELA read alouds. Right now, we would be learning about immigration, right? We learned about all different things that happened in this country throughout time. We learned about the Revolutionary War, and we learned about, well, that was last year. We learned about the Civil War this year. We learned about the War of 1812, and we learned about the Underground Railroad. So the next portion is about immigration. That's when people come to live places from other countries and they make a new country their new home. And many people have been doing this in the United States for so many years. My grandparents did it. I have a grandfather who's from Italy, and I have a grandmother who's from Ireland. So this story is about a family whose great-grandfather, I believe, immigrated from Italy. So this is going to tell his story. It's called All the Way to America, the story of a big Italian family and a little shovel, by Dan Yaccarino. My great-grandfather, Michele Iaccarino, grew up on a farm in Sorrento, Italy, when he was a boy. Hold on, I just realized I still have music on. I need to turn that off. So I'm going to start that over. My great-grandfather, Michele Iaccarino, grew up on a farm in Sorrento, Italy, when he was a boy. His father gave him a little shovel so he could help tend the zucchini, tomatoes, and strawberries that his family sold in the village. They worked very hard, but they were always very poor. So they just told you the great-grandfather used this little shovel. Pay attention, because that little shovel is going to be used for a lot of different things. On this page, he's using the little shovel to help his family on the farm in Italy. And so when he was a young man, Michele left Italy and went all the way to America in search of new opportunities. Work hard, his father told him, handing him the little shovel. But remember to enjoy life and never forget your family, his mother said. She hugged him and gave him their few family photographs and her recipe for tomato sauce. It was a long journey, and how different New York was from his tiny village in Italy. Like many immigrants passing through Ellis Island at the turn of the last century, he was given a new name. Michele Iaccarino was now known as Michael Yaccarino. He was happy to be in America, but never forgot his family in Sorrento. So I want you to think about that. When he got to his new country, his new home, they told him that he had to change his name. I think that's a really strange thing to have to do. That's just my opinion. Now, I talked about this one time when I read this with some students from another school that I used to teach at. And when we talked about this, I found out that a lot of people had some connections with that experience. So I'd love to hear when we Zoom on Wednesday, I'd love to hear if you guys have some connections with that. If you know anybody who had to change their name, or maybe you had to change your name. Friends from home helped each other in this new country. Michael found work in a bakery owned by a man who had also come from Sorrento. Michael polished his little shovel until it shined, and he used it to measure out flour and sugar. So now he's working in a bakery, and he uses his shovel to measure flour and sugar instead of on a farm. Michael met Adeline, and soon they were married. They found an apartment in a neighborhood called Little Italy, where many other recent immigrants lived as well. They had 5 children and did their best to teach them to work hard, enjoy life, and love their family. Michael started his own business as a pushcart peddler and continued to use the little shovel this time to measure out dried fruit and nuts. His oldest son, named Aniello, but everybody called him Dan. Another name change. That's so strange. Back then, children often had to leave school to help support their families. So from the age of 12, Dan worked for his father. When Dan grew up, he married Helen. These are my grandparents. Together, Dan and Helen opened a market. So when it says these are my grandparents, that's the author talking. Notice the author's name is Dan Yacarino. So that's interesting. That means he's named after his grandparents. So they opened a market. They sold all sorts of wonderful Italian food. Now, the little shovel belonged to Dan, and he used it to measure out beans, macaroni, and olives. So now, the shovel is being used again. Dan had always dreamed of living in the country, so he and Helen bought a house with a big yard and raised a family there. He loved having everyone over for Sunday dinners. There they are, having Sunday dinner in his yard. Dan's love of cooking led him to open a restaurant. He made pizza, eggplant parmesan, and spaghetti, all with his grandmother's tomato sauce, of course. Let's think about it. When did we hear about that tomato sauce? Dan's son, Mike, would help out in the kitchen after school. Does anyone have a connection with that? Maybe you help your parents do something after school that has to do with their work? By now, the family was so large that the celebrations were held at the restaurant. Everyone would come together to talk, laugh, and of course, eat. When Mike was a young man, he married Elaine. These are my parents. Mike opened a barber shop. He used the little shovel to pour rock salt over the sidewalk whenever it snowed. You see that? Rock salt is something that people put on the snow and ice when it's on the ground, and the rock salt will melt it, so this way you don't slip and fall. I grew up in a big house in the suburbs, not far from my grandparents. We had a garden in the backyard, and I would help my father Tend to the tomato plants. So now, I think I see the shovel again. What is the shovel being used for? Every year, my parents would take my brother, my sister, and me to the Feast of San Gennaro in Little Italy. We watched the parade, listened to the Italian folk songs, and ate hot zeppelis. I loved New York City. So, I don't know if all of you know this, but I'm from New York, and I'm Italian also. Zeppelis are an Italian dessert that's so yummy. And you really can't find it many places except for New York and Italy. So when I grew up, I moved back to the city where my great-grandfather Mikel had lived. Work hard, my father told me, and he handed me the little shovel. But remember to enjoy life and don't forget to call your family, said my mother. Who else said that in this story? Don't forget to call your family, or don't forget your family. Work hard, enjoy life, and don't forget your family. Somebody else said that. I did work hard, and after a few years, I became an author and an illustrator, creating books for children, like this one. Then I married Sue, and soon our son was born. He is named Michael, after my father and my great-grandfather. Now, I watch Michael and his sister Lucy work on our small terrace with the very same shovel that their great-grandfather brought all the way to America. We grow zucchini, tomatoes, and strawberries. Xander wants to be a part of the story. I do my best to teach them to work hard, enjoy life, and love their family. And here are some pictures from their family. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the story. I'm going to post some questions about this story after you read it, after you listen to it, okay? See you on Wednesday.